Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I... hell... bent on having a good time. Oh, boy. I sure do love talking about cards, though. That's what we're going to do in today's episode, believe it or not. And it's so radical that we're going to be doing it today. Today's episode, isn't it, Dave?
I don't know what you're really talking about, so I'm just going to pretend like you gave a standard opening and say... You know, everybody out there, you can join us in a lot of different ways. Before we get into the episode, we have a blog, Matt, over at the blog. It's just celebrated a year ago, like a month ago. Just celebrated a year of being in existence a month or so ago. So that's really cool. And Matt's publishing all sorts of crazy stuff over there. In a good way, lots of content coming out there. So if you want to join the blog, you can do that. You can see all the information right over here. cardtalk2018.com. We have Second Breakfast. Micah's over there doing some live playthroughs for us on our YouTube channel, which I'm excited about. He does that every other Sunday for us. We have the normal audio and video feed that we do here at Card Talk. So we have all sorts of just real rad things, I guess.
Yeah.
And
some would say they're rad.
But one of the things that we always love to do is to thank our patrons. So if you want to become a patron, feel free to do so. We're at patreon.com/cardtalk2018. And I've been remiss the past few recording sessions. I want to make sure that I thank all of our new patrons that we've had since we've kind of changed our format a little bit. And so I would love to thank new patrons Disco Drew, David, Roper, Doug, James, Matthew, Nick, Andrew, Pratik, Todd, and then I think Brennan and Martina definitely have been thanked before, but thank you again. So we've had some patrons come in, and it's with their help that we're able to do so many things across so many different formats. So thank you so much to not just our new patrons, but to all our patrons who understand what we're doing here at Card Talk. And so, Ted,
Heyo.
What are we doing here at Card Talk?
Well, we got a very wonderful episode today for you Card Talk fans.
It's always a wonderful. Are the episodes anything other than wonderful?
No.
Okay.
I mean, they're going to be great, except for the ones that aren't.
Right.
Yeah. Besides those, yeah, it's gonna be a great show. I could feel it. Do I feel it often? Heck yes. So today's episode, we got a hero lined up for you. It is none other than Halbarad, the leadership hero. Released in the Lost Realm, and now the newly re-released or repackaged Angmar Awakens hero expansion.
Right.
Let's get to it. Halbarad.
That's what we call in the business dead air, and I was just trying to make Ted feel uncomfortable.
It works.
Yep.
He's a leadership hero. He's got 10 threat, 2 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, 4 hit points. He's traded Dunedain, Ranger. He has the following text. While you are engaged with an enemy, Halbarad does not exhaust to commit to a quest. You may optionally engage 1 additional enemy during the encounter phase. Pow.
Little do they know of our long labor for the safekeeping of their borders, and yet I grudge it not. The Return of the King.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that as a little bit of lore. He's one of the rangers that, from what I know, I mean, he spent time safe, like protecting the Shire. That's what he's referencing in his flavor text.
I'm not sure if he. So, I'm. I'm not sure if he's made up or if he's an actual person. Like, if he were an actual person, he would have been part of the Grey Company. Maybe he is. I'm going to say that he is because there's not very many named, and I think Amarthiel was the made up one, and Halbarad is the named part of the Grey Company that has protected the borders. That was part of the Dunedain's mission, is to protect the Shire and keep the innocent hobbits innocent.
He's the leader of the Grey Company, as a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Well, he led the Grey Company, which was 30 rangers south to the aid of their kinsman, Aragorn.
Right. Yes. And so it's all coming back to me now. And as an aside, the the human in the new Rings of Power show that Galadriel meets on the boat, his name is Halbrand. And I know that I am going to confuse those names, not what they do, but I'm going to, I am 100% sure that I am going to call Halbrand from the show Halbarad, and at some point call Halbarad in the game Halbrand.
Yes.
I know that that's something.
They are. There's a newly fictional character in that series, and the name is incredibly similar.
Right. Which is very Tolkien-y, right? Like
names that are one vowel apart from each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Very much so.
Right.
But
let's talk about
Halbarad, the Dunedain Ranger of the Great Company. Dave, what are your first impressions? Have you put him on the table at all?
Yeah. So I will say that this is a hero that I look over a lot. Have I built a deck or two with him? Yes, because I think that first of all, his abilities are passive, so they're not actions. You don't have to exhaust him. And so I remember trying to take advantage of that first passive ability where if you stay engaged with somebody, then he doesn't exhaust to commit to a quest, which is great action advantage and really fits into that Dunedain archetype where you're trying to engage everything. But I think also it really fits into that Hobbit archetype, not the main archetype, but the one like the Tom Cotton and even that second ability where you want to optionally engage an additional enemy with Sam Gamgee. So I know that I have messed around with Halbarad, but I find, again, playing solo, I find trying to stack my deck and, making it effective as a solo deck is very much a challenge. And I really haven't tried to build a soloable Dunedain deck because there's just so many other things that I am interested in. It's not because I don't find the Dunedain archetype itself interesting. It's not because of anything like that, but like I'm messing around with hobbits all the time. So I guess I should try to put this guy in a deck yet again. I remember it was when I put this guy in a deck, it was maybe right when I first got the Lost Realm. I was like, oh, I'm going to see what this guy works with.
New hero.
Yeah, put him on the table.
They got that new hero smell.
Yeah. I think he suffered, from what I remember, and then why I'm not drawn to him as much is because he suffers from that 2-2-2 lineup, where you want somebody that's going to do something really well, and he does everything just kind of pretty good, Mm-hmm. So, but there's ways to do that. And the fact that he doesn't exhaust to quest if you're engaged with somebody definitely is very good.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why he has that stat line, because he's trying to pull double duty by getting action banished. So he's at least questing for 2 and then also defending or attacking for 2, I think adds to his value of the, or compensates for the lower, not having a 3 in one of his stats.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand what you're saying, where he might get overlooked, especially in a solo deck too. You mentioned his passive abilities, which is a good point. So why don't we talk about each of those, and let's also touch upon the Dunedain archetype a little bit. So the Dunedain in general, their archetype relies on having enemies engaged with you. Generally, you keep an enemy engaged with you turn over turn to continue to get those benefits, right? So if you had an enemy engaged with you last turn that you didn't kill, then when it comes to the planning and quest phase next turn, Halbarad can then quest for free. Before I give my opinion on this archetype, do you have a thought on it, Dave?
Well, I mean, about the Dunedain archetype,
Yeah.
like I said, I just think it's hard to build
to manage.
and it's not even to manage, like to build a deck to do the Dunedain thing as a solo player.
Okay.
And I've found, like, when I tried to use Tactics Aragorn, like, it's just like, you want Tactics Aragorn to hit all the time. You want him to be able to kill something, pull stuff down, and that just doesn't happen often with a when you're playing solo. And if that does happen, where you have multiple enemies to deal with, like, then you're the only one that has to deal with them. So, like, it becomes hard to kind of play that, kind of that stereotypical thing. Mm-hmm. So the Dunedain archetype, while I've dabbled in the pool, I would not say that I've dove off into the deep end with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring up some. So what were you going to say about the?
Well, yeah, the archetype is. I think it's cool. It's cool because you're like, all right, Dunedain, what's their thing? Like, fighting the enemy, like hands-on, engaging the enemy, right? And that kind of fits them, like, from a thematic standpoint, right? You think of them as actually kind of being I want to say, like, they're kind of like on the front lines, right? They're like the watchers and protectors, and their numbers are few, and but it's difficult. It's really, really difficult to do. Ideally, the best thing to combo with a Dunedain is the single trap of a forest snare.
Right.
Because that is a lore trap from the core set that you play an enemy that's engaged with you, and that enemy no longer attacks.
Right.
So then you have kind of a neutered enemy that it'll get a shadow card each round, but it never reveals it because it never attacks you. And then you're consistently getting over those bonuses.
Which is also nice for Tom Cotton. Force snare an enemy. So, like, to, see where this goes.
Yeah. But if you're not doing that, it's hard. I see people put this down at the table, and I'm like, all right, you're going to get an enemy, and then you're going to not kill it, and then next turn more enemies come out, and then you get those, and then you don't kill those. It's like, I'd rather see the enemies... Like, I feel clearing the board is a better strategy in general. But let's talk about the benefits you do get, and what this guy does. So pulling double duty, he gets to quest for free. That certainly, you get action banish, right? And then there's going to be other things that trigger it. Kind of the archetype comes together. So you have other heroes, you have other cards in the card pool that interact with having an enemy engage with you. So it's not just the one benefit you're trying to get.
True.
Multiple, right? But it's still it's tough to manage if you're not going to trap that enemy.
Right.
So his double duty, that's pretty straightforward. His second ability, you may optionally engage one additional enemy during the encounter phase. I find that ability very useful in multiplayer. In solo, it's if you get a really, really low threat, I guess, and you want to fight multiple enemies, it gives you that option. Right.
Otherwise, especially when you're dealing with somebody, when one of your other heroes is Sam, who you want to kind of have multiple engagements to help boost Sam up, So there is some of that there. that, and I think that's where I went when I built this Dunedain deck. But back then I was a lousy deck builder. Now I'm just an okay one. So like
most okayest deck builder.
Right. I'm the okayest deck builder ever.
Card talk.
Right. Well, we rely on you and Grant for deck building stuff. I just facilitate here.
That makes sense. So the deck that I most often play him in is what I call the Grey Company deck, because I pair him with Eladin and Elro here, because Eladin and Elro here are leadership and tactics, and they have abilities to gain actions, right? I think Eladin is the one who can spend a resource to ready after defending, and then Elro here, nope, reverse that. Eladin, no, yeah, man, I'm gonna look it up now, because now I just... Let's see here, LOTR, LCG. Okay, so Eladin is, the tactics one. Eladin readies, you can pay a resource after he attacks to ready him. And then Elro here is a leadership one who can pay a resource after he defends to ready. So with those two, you have a bunch of action advantage, right? Because you get to ready yourself. Right. But they don't have any ranged or sentinel printed on them.
Right.
So you want to engage multiple enemies. I call it locally.
Right.
Right? Like, not the table engaging enemies, just you.
Right.
So his ability I found in multiplayer, in like a 3 or 4 player game, and actually even in a 2-player game, it helps make up for not having ranged or sentinel. Because now if there's
because then you can take an extra enemy, and then you don't have to worry about somebody else. I can defend this if somebody else has ranged, right? Or you're helping alleviate somebody else's burden.
Yeah. So if you have no open defenders, or you maybe have like one defender but no attackers, and I don't have any range to help you, if I have the actions, I'll just take them both. No, that's fine. I got it. You just grab them.
So here's my
surprisingly useful.
And here's my rule question, Ted. So because I haven't played this guy in multiplayer, when you do optional engagements, do optional engagements go all the way around and then you can optionally engage what's left, or do you have both of your optional engagements right then and there? So if you're player 1, can I optionally engage both at 2 enemies now that I'm player 1, and then leave what's left to player 2, 3, 4, or does it have to go player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4, and then back to player 1?
Yeah. So I've always interpreted him as when it becomes my turn, when it becomes the player's turn that controls Halbarad, they just get to choose 2 instead of 1.
Right.
I've always interpreted that way. I could see someone else interpreting it.
Well, because the engagement check, when you get to non-optional engagements, you just go around, right? It just goes around and
you do
but
when you look at the engagement rules, it's like the rules itself never says that it circles around, right? Because you're usually only allowed 1.
Right.
So it's like players a turn to do their engagements, and if you have the ability to do 2 instead of 1, that's when you do it.
Right.
So
that's how I've always interpreted it.
Yeah.
For every single time I've ever played this guy in multiplayer. No, but that's how I would have figured, because your optional engagements. Otherwise, what difference does it make? You're player 1, and then all the optional engagements happen, and then there's nothing left anyways, right?
Yeah.
So
I'd say he's most useful in a deck where you don't have range and sentinel, or you can build your kind of options open up if you're playing multiplayer, again, even 2-player, and you're like, well, should I put in a ranged or a sentinel hero? You don't have to do that as much. Your deck building can be, like I said, Eladin and Elro here, for me, I thought were great picks that worked out really well, but there's plenty of other heroes, ones that don't have ranged and sentinel printed in, there's a lot of great defenders, like Dane, like Spirit Dane. He's a great defender. He's not printed with sentinel on him, right? So you want to make sure you're getting enemies
right
until you give him Sentinel or something to that effect. So, yeah, the Dunedain cards, like I said, I think they're very fun to play because there's so many benefits to
Right.
having the enemies engage with you. But I almost I feel a little forced to either also play lore with him, like most of the time to play lore with him to get his first ability to go off so I can play Forest Near,
Right.
or have someone else play
Like a trap deck or
a
something.
trap deck, right? And then Forest Near 2 is not cheap. It's three
Right.
resources.
It's 3. Yep.
If you play
Or
Hero,
right. I was just saying that you get the discount, right?
yeah, Hero Damrod, his ability is to reduce the cost of each lore. But then you're kind of like always playing lore. It's like then you're playing him, and then so when you start looking at that, it kind of starts shrinking your options. And I would encourage deck builders and players to try and expand it. And you may not always get like both of his abilities every single turn, but they're just kind of there when you need them. And if you happen, sometimes enemies get left over too, even not by intention. You plan to kill enemies, but then shadow cards exhaust your characters, or enemies get their stats increased from shadows or treacheries, and enemies just stay on the table. Right. And then you just kind of pick up the bonus when you're in a tight bind, which is when you need that, right?
Right. I mean, I also feel like when you're building this kind of deck, like, who does he compete with, right? Amarthiel. Amarthiel gives you the extra resource, has a different stat spread, is 10, it's 10. I feel like Amarthiel on paper looks a little bit better than Halbarad, right? Because it's like 1/3/3, and you get the extra resource, and I forget what else.
Yeah, so Marthiel, when you get one enemy engaged with you, he gains the tactics icon.
Right.
And then
your 2, then you get
the extra resource.
The resource.
So ideally, that's a great pair, right? They're built with like the 2 passive abilities built upon engaging 1 or 2 enemies in that case, and then hanging on to those enemies turn over turn. It's just like I said, it can be, if it can be a bold strategy if they are not trapped in the forest snare, because then you're, but
then the point, I guess, then the thing is that then you don't need to have all the things that they have. I'm thinking playing solo, right? Like, if I've already dispatched all the enemies and I don't have an extra optional engagement or anything, like, what do I need? I don't need, but I see what you're saying. You want to keep something engaged with you anyways, right? Like, so you want that thing to be engaged with you, but then also not attack. So I don't know, like, it's playing solo is a whole different game than playing multiplayer.
Yeah, and the action advantage you always want in solo. I mean, you're kind of dying for action advantage, right? You really want your heroes to pull their weight,
right?
So it can be very helpful. I'll say the other card that probably is good to pair with him to try and get the bonus, though it's not as good as Forest Snare, is another trap card called Outmatched.
That's the tactics.
Yeah, I was going to say Unmatched, but it's...
No. Yeah, the tactics, which is maybe a little easier to put in a Dunedain deck. Because then you don't have to worry about running lore, and there's more tactics cards in a Dunedain deck. And you get Dunedain stuff going on. So
yeah. So Outmatched is a 1-cost tactics attachment that you put in your play area, and when it's unattached, it gets thrown on the next enemy that engages you, and it has a response. After the attached enemy resolves its attack, you ready the defender.
Right.
So it's giving you a free defense against an enemy.
You have to defend it, and as long as its attack isn't like crazy, it gets a crazy shadow. Like, you have to still go through the shadow card thing, but you still get your defender back. Like, so it's, as long as you can deal with the attack, it's a net neutral thing for you.
Yeah. So you're at that point you're kind of risking whatever the shadow card is turn over turn.
Right.
But it is a much easier thing to play. You're right, because even a Marthiel can play it with one enemy. You
Right.
can even if you have no tactics cards, a Marthiel gains access to that.
Yeah.
Or if you just have one tactics hero, right? It's very easy to get that off. So it's probably the next best thing to do instead of force. And if you want to try to get the, and yeah, you definitely want it to try and be something that's weak and not right like a big troll or
Right. Right. I
some
mean,
big creature. You want it to be like a tiny,
like an orc, like a
like
little orc.
like a little baby orc, or like
Right. Nothing with
like a,
nothing with archery on it.
yeah, nothing with archery, nothing that has crazy abilities that say
Right.
like if the card revealed is not a shadow card, take 2 damage. Like there's some enemies that have effects if they don't have a shadow card
Right.
effect revealed. Like, but you can also
Right.
can't control it. You just kind of throw it out there, and be like, "Oh, something good."
Right. Right.
um, let's see here.
I mean, there's a couple of things that you may want to play in order to do this. Like we could get into a little bit of the thing, like because you want an enemy, right? You want to play something that gets enemies if you're playing solo. So like you could play Dunedain Hunter, right? 0 cost, go top 5, go look for an enemy, play engage with you.
Which will
That's
happen during the planning phase. So then he's free to quest.
right. So then so Dunedain Hunter is a good thing. Rohirrim, which oddly is Aragorn's mount, but that wouldn't be horrible to put onto, a Marthiel, or not a Marthiel, to put on Halbarad, right? Because you get to, because you're taking an optional engagement, you could engage something, attack, kill it, without having to worry about it if you can,
Oh,
I don't
sure.
so there's some things you can do, and then you can take advantage of the fact that he quests for free, as long as you're engaged with somebody, so you boost up his willpower, and then you have something, you could. Star Brooch is one of those attachments that you never think about because it can go onto a Dunedain, and you can't reduce his willpower. So there's some things that you can do. It's not specifically for Halbarad, but there's ideas that you can
Absolutely.
that go on there.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Dunedain Hunter, which is a great card to play. That actually brings to mind another one of my favorite cards that works perfectly with Halbarad, which is the Tactics event Wait No Longer. And Wait No Longer is a 2-cost Tactics event, and it's a response at the beginning of the quest phase. You search the top 5 cards of the encounter deck for an enemy and put it into play engage with you, and then you reveal 1 less encounter card.
Right.
So that is like a twofer because
you're
get
not adding any threat to the staging area, and you get
right, yeah, right. You get the enemy. I was waiting for you to finish the thought.
Yeah, no. What I realize is like I'm so excited about this stuff that I cut you off often, and then I it's like, oh yeah, they wait no longer. God, yeah, that's a great, It's I need you to finish your own thoughts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, as Dave was getting into you play Wait No Longer. So you get the enemy engaged with you at the beginning of the quest phase, and then you commit afterwards. So then he's questing for free because you have an enemy in front of you, and then you're right. So it's like you're adding 2 willpower while taking out probably 1 to 2, maybe even 3 or 4 threat. So I like that card a lot as well. So there's lots of little tricks and things. Those are a couple ways to get enemies engaged with you. There's a lot of things you can do. There's so many other ways, like other Dunedain. There's Son of Arnor.
Yeah, Son of Arnor, which engages somebody when you play him.
From anywhere.
Great. Right, from anywhere.
So if someone else has an enemy, you just grab it from them.
Right. And since you want to defend and keep enemies out, the Guardian of Arnor helps out. Where you get +1 defense for every enemy engagement. So there's a lot of things to do, but it's, who knows? I think that playing solo becomes a tough, not tough, but I just feel like, it's
Yeah.
either you're gonna, it just doesn't. I don't know. It's just,
I think his abilities are I think they're stronger in 2 and up,
right,
really, as opposed to solo.
right.
I think this particular hero.
Yeah, I mean, I guess lastly, before we move on to some of the accoutrement, how does this guy stack up to his ally version? Because we always, like when you have Treebeard, you're going to run Treebeard ally over, over the hero most of the time. Like Treebeard does have his uses, but so, Halbarad ally versus Halbarad hero. Like, do we have Halbarad guy at cons?
I haven't seen Halbarad guy, Halbarad person.
Right.
I'd say there's a little bit of a competition. There is a little bit because this, Halbarad from his ally version from the Flame of the West pack, he's got the same stat line except he's got 3 hit points.
Right, one less hit point.
Yeah, and he's got this passive ability where each enemy gets plus 10 engagement cost that you're engaged with, which can help you trigger certain abilities like Sam, for example. But you also reduce the cost to play Halbarad by 1 for each enemy already engaged with you. So if you're not playing the hero and but you're still playing Dunedain because you're running like Aragorn and a Marthiel and someone else, like Damrod, like a trapper, you might he plays into his ally version plays very well into the archetype also,
Right.
because if you have 2 enemies engaged with you, you're only paying 2 for his pretty good stat line for an ally,
Right.
to have virtually the same stats as his hero.
Right.
So there's a little bit there, and you kind of want to weigh, like, all right, how often am I going to get this free questing, and do I need to engage, like,
Right.
do enemies have high engagement costs that I need to option all the time? A couple scenario dependent things, I'd say, too.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, as we start moving toward the end of the episode here, does this guy represent who he is in the lore? Like, does this card seem to represent the character from the books?
From everything I know about him, which, as we demonstrated, is not very much, I would say yes. Like I said, he's a Dunedain. He's a border protector, and he's like, come fight me, bro.
Yeah, and he's like pulling people out of the Shire or from going into the Shire and coming to him. That second passive ability, right? That's like, I think it's good. It's not just a gameplay. I think that this kind of reflects who he is in the books, the character, right? There's some gameplay stuff that some cards have sometimes. Maybe that first ability is a little more gameplay-ish than the second one. But yeah, I think that represents. How about the artwork, though?
It's okay. I mean, he's like bloodied up or whatever, part of a fight. He's got that fur cloak kind of, I'm a ranger of the north, so I need to wear warm clothes type of feeling to it, but nothing that is like so stand out to me.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely resembles like Tactics Aragorn. He's got the those short swords in his hand. There's 2 of them, but I feel like he's wearing like this weird I feel like I know he's wearing gloves, but it appears that it's all like one thing. Like he's wearing this like rubber latex suit. It's got like the clasp right up here. Like it's strange. And I think he's standing next to a lake, or not a lake, a stream, and around back, I guess over his left shoulder, I I always feel like that's a continuation of his stole coming around, but that can't be. I feel like that's like the water crashing or part of the background, and it's a little confusing. So,
I
like
see what you mean.
yeah, it looks. I don't know. So, I it's not bad art. It's just it's. I feel like there's better artwork in the game than this guy. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Should we ring this guy?
Let's ring him up at the register.
Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know or maybe new or has forgotten, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we ring a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card to rule them all, and 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made. So, Ted, how do you feel about Halbrand?
Halbarad.
Oh, Halbarad. No, I'm actually asking you about Rings of Power now. How do you feel about Halbarad? No, I'm just kidding.
No. He, man, I've used him, but he doesn't. I don't want to pull him out too often because the Dunedain, they're cool thematically. There's a lot of great characters there. Dunedain, Aragorn, chiefly among them, and it's like a cool, total like kick butt archetype that you're like, yeah, I want to dig into this and play this, but it's kind of difficult to play and like pull off really well. I've seen some players do it very well at conventions, but it can be a little bit tricky. It's not as straightforward or always the safest strategy. So I'm gonna put him at probably like a 7. He was close to a 6, but I think I'm gonna say 7 because it's kind of like you can engage multiple enemies, but then I kind of would rather play a ranged hero if I know I'm playing multiplayer. And they have some great ancillary cards that do things to help Dunedain they help give you resources, reduce costs of allies, ready your heroes. They have some neat tricks part of that archetype, but it's tough. It's like you're almost making the game a little more difficult for yourself when you do it, which is fun. It can be very fun if you're that type of player and you're looking for a challenge. I think Dunedain is that tier.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, and I'm going to add to that I think that, when I'm looking at this card, especially playing solo, I just gloss over this guy, because, like you said, I think it's more important to clear the board for the most part than it is to, and I have tried to put together Tom Cotton decks that are, lore and tactics so that you can put the forest snare out, and I've tried that tech, but it just seems like solo that you're just not able to get all the pieces going fast enough to be able to kill a third turn big enemy.
You just feel so low when you play it.
Yes. So low that you can't play Halbarad. And so but I'm intrigued about revisiting Halbarad now, doing the show and thinking about Halbarad. I'm intrigued at, especially now that the full card pool is out, there's got to be some more tricks and things that you can do with Halbarad. So I have some ideas in my head there, but I'm going to have to give him an 8. I'm going to give him an 8. I don't want to give him a 9 because it's not like I'm completely against him. And, a 10 is a special type of card. A 10 is like the end comes and not Dyniner, the Brock Iron Fist. But I don't know. I may pull them out after we record and see what I can put together if there's anything. So
other players, encourage you to give them a try. Like I said, think of if you have non-ranged Sentinel heroes, it's perfect. It can really help you get around that. It opens up your deck building if you think about it that way. So,
right.
Check it out.
It's definitely an option. Okay, everybody. Well, join us again next week as we talk about more cards, and see you later, everybody. Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.